referral or prescription, but I also have to present ID, and I have to present my hospital card. I'll continue after question period. Thank you for the speech. The honourable member will have 5 minutes remaining for questions and comments when debate will resume after question period.
By members, déclaration de député. L'honorable député de Ville-Marie, le Sud-Ouest, Île-des-Sœurs.
Madam Speaker, thousands of Indigenous people fought in the War of 1812, including on this day, October 26, 1813. 205 years ago at the Battle of Chateauguay, Mohawk warriors from Kahnawake and Kanesatake fighting a common foe, Ranatagarias, the destroyer of towns who had destroyed their people's villages some 30 years earlier. The Battle of Chateauguay is remembered alongside the Battle of Chrysler's Farm that caused American forces to give up their attack on Montreal and abandon the St. Lawrence campaign. On this day, a British force of slightly over 1,500 troops, composed mostly of French-Canadian fighters and commanded by Charles de Salaberry, repelled an American fighting offensive twice its size. Today, 6 regiments of the Canadian Armed Forces carry battle honours from the conflict. Le Royal 22e Régiment, the Canadian Grenadier Guards, up the Guards, the Black Watch, les Voltigeurs de Québec, les Fusiliers de Saint-Laurent et le Régiment de la Chaudière. Madame la Présidente, l'histoire de notre...
Madam Speaker, the history of our country is both rich and complex. But let us remember that on this day, 205 years ago, the founding peoples of this country united to fight a common enemy and set the foundation.
Calgary, Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, in this government's last budget, it was noted with some concern that the discount on Alberta crude had averaged $20 a barrel over the previous year. The budget then went on to predict that with new pipelines on the way, the differential this year would begin to close, allowing Canadians to get closer to world prices. Well, Mr. Speaker, the differential has not shrunk. Last week, it hit a staggering $50 per barrel. This means that under this government's failed pipeline policies, Canada is subsidizing the American economy by sending discount oil along with jobs, investment, and lost tax revenue to the United States while supporting Saudi Arabia by importing its oil. So on behalf of thousands of my constituents that depend directly on the energy industry, I call upon this government to stop Bill C-69, stop C-48, quit dithering, table a plan to get Trans Mountain built, scrap the carbon tax, and get serious about energy policy.
The honourable member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Congratulations, 2018 Windsor-Essex Sports Hall of Fame inductees. Athletes Cheryl Damphouse, golf, Andy Delmore, hockey, Richard Shaw, basketball, and Mary Spencer, boxing. And to sports builders, J. Paul Redham, thoroughbred racing, Don Marin, wrestling coach, Dominic Silvaggio, basketball coach, and Paul Carter, basketball officiating. Tecumseh Baseball Club for 75 years, and the 2011 to 2015 University of Windsor women's basketball team, winning 5 straight championships. Since 1981, the Windsor-Essex Sports Hall of Fame has been showcasing and archiving our illustrious sporting achievements. I salute this year's board, headed by Dr. Scott Martin, Chuck Smith, Charlotte Loring, Anthony Panaccia, Craig Greenham, and Carrie Vignew. Now, let's all get behind the Faro Riverside Miracle Park and continue to remove the barriers to participation in sport.
L'honorable député d'Argenteuil, La Petite Nation.
Merci, Madame la Présidente.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. During the 20th edition of the Mercadar Awards, organized by Laurentides International in Mirabel, a company in my riding won top honors in the Innovative Exporter category. LP Adventure, located in Brownsburg-Chatham, manufactures and sells parts for Subaru. This company stands out in particular due to its international development project. I would like to congratulate the president of LP Adventure, Julien Pilon, as well as the members of his team, for having won this prestigious award. I'm proud of the success of this company in Argenteuil, La Petite Nation, whose know-how, innovation, and passion led them to become a real North American leader in the manufacturing of parts for Subaru sports vehicles. Congratulations to the entire team.
Honourable member for Malpeque.
Madam Speaker, today I have the honour to rise and congratulate you Ukrainian interns working on the Hill here as part of the Canada-Ukraine parliamentary program, whose time in Parliament is rapidly coming to an end. Established in 1991, this program over time has brought almost 1,000 young Ukrainians to Canada to learn about our system of government, our history, and our people. A number of parliamentarians from all parties had the privilege of working with these talented young men and women who we sincerely thank them and hope that their time here on the Hill that they have learned from us as we have learned from them. This is the 5th time I have hosted an intern, and I can attest to the fact that it is an excellent cultural and educational exchange between Canada and Ukraine, as well as an opportunity to deepen our national ties. I'd like to thank my intern, Yaroslav, and wish all of them well in the future.
The honourable member for Kitchener-Conestoga.
Madam Speaker, last Friday I participated in the Bridges of Hope project when it launched at Hartman Bridge in New Hamburg. Bridges of Hope is an initiative launched locally by 2 inspirational Grade 12 students from my riding, Greta Dotsert and Olivia Miller. Their mission is simple: to break the stigma surrounding mental illness by attaching uplifting and positive messages to 3 frequently traveled pedestrian bridges in the Waterloo region. Messages like, "Your life matters," "You are not alone," and "Tomorrow needs you." Madam Speaker, I've quoted often in this House, hope is the oxygen of the human spirit. Without it, the spirit dies. Hope is foundational to mental health recovery, and it's contagious. We each have it within us to share with our neighbor. Greta and Olivia, your compassion and your desire to help others are an example to all of us. Your message of hope will impact the lives of many in our community, especially those who need encouragement the most. You are not alone. Reach out. Embrace hope. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Le député de Saint-Jean.
Madame la Présidente, dernièrement,
Madam Speaker, recently, 2 community solidarity events were organized in the riding of Saint-Jean. I would like to congratulate Lise Boulanger, who mobilized volunteers during the World Day for the Refusal of Misery to serve meals to citizens in need. I would also like to highlight the involvement of the Saint-Jean-sur-Richelieu Homelessness Roundtable, which, in cooperation with many other local groups, presented for the very first time in our community a homelessness awareness night. This raising of awareness led to the rediscovery of the importance of the work that is done by the Roundtable. Along with Action Dépendance, they're working on a project whose goal is to offer services to people who are facing homelessness. Madam Speaker, it is with great respect that I applaud the volunteers and stakeholders who get involved and who make our country a better place.
A member for Oakville.
Madam Speaker, after visiting the Lions Foundation of Canada dog guides in my riding of Oakville, I can truly say that dogs are people's best friend. Madam Speaker, when people think dog guides, they usually think of a dog providing assistance to someone with visual impairment. But these dogs are trained to do much more. Dog guides assist people with hearing impairments, provide seizure response, detect changes in blood sugar for people with diabetes, support children on the autism spectrum, and help the physically disabled. A dog guide increases confidence and mobility of those that are affected by impairments and provide a strong sense of safety and companionship. Many people in my riding foster puppies before they're ready for training, and they are always looking for loving families to adopt a dog when they retire from duty. So if you're looking for a 4-legged hero, look no further than a dog guide of Oakville. Madam Speaker, I am so proud to share the incredible work of the Lions Foundation of Canada Dog Guides. I can't wait to visit again. Thank you.
The member for Elgin, Middlesex, London.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. And Madam Speaker, I am proud to rise in support of Children's Vision Month, which takes place annually every October. I would like to thank the Canadian Association of Optometrists who took the time to meet me on this topic and share important information. When children reach 6 months of age, vision is the most dominant of the senses and forms the basis of cognitive and social development. Despite this fact, a majority of parents are unaware of the importance of vision on overall health. Uncorrected vision problems interfere with learning, reading, and concentrating in school, which impacts all aspects of growth and development. Since nearly a quarter of Canadian children have some form of diagnosable vision problem, it is important to recognize the significance of Children's Vision Month and act on it for the benefit of our children and their futures. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Longueuil-Charles-Lemoine.
Madam Speaker, during Small Business Week, I had the chance to attend a roundtable with entrepreneurs and winners of the 2018 WISE 50 Over 50 Awards. Les lauréats sont des
The winners are bold and innovative Canadian entrepreneurs who started their businesses after turning 50 and who did whatever was necessary to launch the business of their dreams. Throughout this animated conversation, I learned about the particular challenges met by these extraordinary men and women.
Thinks of entrepreneurs, we often envision young people. What we fail to see, Madam Speaker, is the incredible talent and expertise of our senior entrepreneurs. These entrepreneurs are forces to be reckoned with in the world of business. I salute all seniorpreneurs who are creating jobs, following their passion, and proving that entrepreneurship certainly knows no age. Ils sont une véritable source.
They are a real source of inspiration for every generation. Thank you.
The honourable member for Kitchener South Hespeler.
One of the most historic and picturesque parts of the riding is the village of Hespeler, which was first settled in 1798. It is home to over 70 independent family-operated shops, restaurants, and services where our community gathers. Nestled beside the Speed River, the traditional old downtown benefits from the stewardship of the Hespeler Business Improvement Area Association, which oversees the beautification and preservation of the historic and traditional character of our village on the river. The BIA is a non-profit organization with a membership of over 50 businesses and property owners who fund the association and volunteer their time. This year, the BIA supported more than 20 community events. Two highlights were the lighting of the falls at St. Jacob's Landing and the annual spring Easter egg hunt. Thank you to the members of the Hespeler BIA for their great work and the great work they do for our community.
The honourable member for Edmonton West.
Madam Speaker, Albertans are struggling, Edmontonians are struggling. And what do we get from the Ottawa Liberals in our time of need? A carbon tax. Now, their response to concerns voiced about this carbon tax on everything, take the kids to morning hockey on a bus, renovate your house, maybe buy an electric car. Now, that's easy enough to say if you're a trust fund millionaire. Now, people in my riding are already feeling the hit from the Liberal failure on pipelines and their attack on our energy industry with Bill C-69 and the tanker ban. Now, on top of all of that, they're being forced to pay for a carbon tax on everything. The Liberals preach about the middle-class tax cut, but that tiny amount means nothing when the cost of everything else, including interest rates and debt, is skyrocketing thanks to this government. It's time for this government to start thinking about their individual impacts of the policies are having on everyday Canadians, rather than pandering to special interest groups. It's time for this government to listen to Albertans and axe this carbon tax.
The honourable member for West Vancouver, Sunshine Coast, Sea to Sky Country.
Giselle Portinier is an award-winning filmmaker. Her documentary, In the Name of Your Daughter, was chosen to be shown at the World Parliamentary Conference in Ottawa last week. In the Name of Your Daughter is about the most courageous girls in the world, the children in Tanzania who risk their lives to defy their parents and the thousands-year-old custom of female genital mutilation. Although female genital mutilation is illegal in Tanzania, old customs die hard. Fathers and families believe that this form of torture reduces promiscuity, and they know that mutilated girls command twice the bride price in cows. This documentary introduces us to the chillingly named cutting season, when young African girls know that they are about to be cut, and to Rabah Samueli, who protects these girls at her safe house. In Maria's case, her grandmother ordered her to pack a bag and go to her father's village for a mutilation ceremony. Instead, Maria ran away from home and straight to the safe house. I wish I could save other girls from FGM, the young girl says, tears streaming down her face. Maria is 8. Thank you.
The honourable member for South Okanagan, West Kootenay.
Madam Speaker, last Saturday, British Columbians voted in municipal elections. Hundreds of citizens in South Okanagan, West Kootenay were candidates for mayors, councillors, school board trustees, and regional district directors. Some succeeded and some did not, but I want to congratulate all of them for offering to serve. Municipal politics is one of the most important but most thankless tasks in the country, and I'd like to highlight two of the careers of two citizens who chose to retire this year and let others carry the torch. One is Tom Siddon, who started in civic politics in Richmond, BC, then served many years here in this place as a cabinet minister, then retired to Culleton in my riding, where he was elected to the school board and served 2 terms as a regional district director. The second is Karen Hamling, who first was elected to Nakusp Town Council in 1987, then served as mayor from 2005 to 2018. To Karen and Tom and all those who have served or simply had the courage to run, I say thank you.
The honourable member for Niagara Falls.
Madam Speaker, this week the Prime Minister and his government announced that they will force provinces that are not on side with their carbon tax to pay for it anyway. Now, this will affect families from across the nation. The Prime Minister expects Canadians to believe that sunny ways will prevail. In reality, this tax and grab scheme will make everyday living more expensive for Canadians commuting to work, feeding their families, or filling their gas tanks. How in the world can this government expect Canadians to get excited about a $12.50 per month return when in reality they know they will be paying much more? Sunny ways, hardly. Madam Speaker, it's more like gloomy days. When will this government start working for Canadians rather than expecting Canadians to work for them?
The honourable member for Edmonton Centre.
Madam Speaker, yesterday was International Artists' Day. Nos artistes et créateurs.
Our artists and creators in Canada are among the most talented in the world. They help to make our experience known and promote innovation through their creativity.
Edmonton has produced some of that remarkable talent enjoyed worldwide. This includes musicians like the late maestros Tommy Banks and Brian Kipping, or playwright-actor Darren Hogan, and recent inductees to Edmonton's Arts Culture Hall of Fame like saxophone player Raymond Barrell, choreographer Shelley Switzer, and choir master Laurier Fagnan. We would not be able to support and celebrate so many artists without all of those who support the arts, from patrons who buy tickets to a Winspear show, the Edmonton Opera, or the Art Gallery of Alberta, to philanthropists such as Diane and Irv Kipnis, who have a long legacy of supporting Edmonton and Canadian artists. Thank you and congratulations to all artists from coast to coast to coast.
Oral questions. Questions orales. The honourable member for Carleton.
The Prime Minister promised that the budget will be balanced next year, but this year the deficit is 3 times higher than promised. This week, the Bank of Canada increased the interest rate, which will force Canadians to pay higher taxes to pay for the interest on our debt. It's money for bankers and not for hospitals and highways. Will the economic statement tell us exactly when the budget will be balanced, yes or no? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. I would like to remember the member that in 2015, Canadians had a choice between austerity or growth, and we promised to give more to the middle class, and the results speak for themselves. We have the strongest growth in the G7 in the last year, and this year the OECD said that next year, Canadian families will be $2,000 richer than under the previous government because we are counting on what counts, on the welfare of Canadians.
The question was when the budget would be balanced. We still don't have an answer from this government. This Prime Minister, on another subject, is a high-tax hypocrite. He raised taxes on families by taking away the children's fitness tax credit, by taxing taking away their tuition tax credit and their education tax credit, while protecting his tax-funded nannies for himself. Now he has extended a sweetheart deal to large corporate industrial emitters while forcing others to pay the carbon tax. Will small businesses get the same exemption?
I just want to remind the member that it's not parliamentary language to call other members' names, and so I would hope that he will excuse his language after the fact. The Honourable Minister of environment and
to
climate change.
to stand up and talk about our climate plan, because I'm always hopeful that the other side will learn to understand that, one, the climate change is real, two, we need to take action, and three, there's an economic opportunity. But let me talk about what folks are saying about our plan. The CEO of the Toronto Regional Board of Trade: a successful price on carbon should be transparent, revenue neutral, and provide support for trade-exposed industry. The board is encouraged with this announcement largely satisfies those objectives. We look forward to working with the federal government to ensure the support provided to small and medium-sized businesses helps them remain competitive.
The honourable member for Carleton.
Well, it's no surprise that CEOs are happy with the Liberal carbon tax. That's part of the high tax hypocrisy, right? They get exempted if they run large industrial corporations. They get a 90% exemption on their emissions, while small businesses like plumbers and carpenters and pizza shop owners will pay the tax on 100% of the energy they use to run their businesses. So a simple yes or no question. Will small businesses get the same exemption from the Liberal carbon tax as the large industrial emitters? Yes or no?
Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
I want to know, yes or no, do the Conservatives have a climate plan that's going to meet their target? Now, Canadians would love to see this climate plan, but let's be clear. We have put a price on pollution for everyone, whether you're a small business or a big business, or all Canadians, because we know that polluting isn't free, that we've done this in a way that makes sense, that ensures that companies are competitive, and will also put more money in the pockets of Canadians, because we know everyone wants to be part of the solution, because everyone's feeling the impacts of climate change, and they also understand the huge economic opportunity of clean growth.
Honourable member for Carleton.
Well, the member still does not answer the question. She is giving an exemption to the large corporate industrial emitters. They get a 90% write-off on the carbon tax, whereas small businesses, who are the engine of job creation and growth in this country, will have to pay the tax on 100% of the energy they consume. It's just like when the Prime Minister protects his personal trust fund. Will the government end the high tax hypocrisy and extend the same exemption to our small businesses? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, always pleased to stand up and once again explain how our climate plan works, in the hopes that the Conservatives will finally have a climate plan that meets the target. We have a plan that ensures that everyone pays a price on pollution. But the approach we've taken for large emitters, it should be an approach that the Conservatives would support, because presumably they want good jobs to stay in Canada, they want big businesses to reduce their emissions, and they also want us to grow their economy. That's the approach we've taken. It's the approach followed in Europe, it's the approach followed in Alberta, it's the approach followed in Quebec, in California, and in China.
The honourable member for Carleton.
And there's the admission that we were looking for. She said that we should support her exemption on the carbon tax for large industrial emitters, because that will keep jobs here in Canada, which means that applying that same tax to small businesses, who are the largest creators of jobs, will actually send jobs out of Canada. That is her admission. She admits the carbon tax will drive jobs out of this country. If that's the case for large industrial corporations, and that's why they're getting an exemption, will she extend that exemption to small businesses? Yes or no?
The Honourable Minister.
Once again, don't take it from me that our climate plan works. Take it from Mark Carney, the Governor of the Bank of England. You need a price on carbon and you need a price on pollution. Canada, as of today, has both. It unlocks investment decisions which will make far more low-carbon economies. The Executive Director of the Canadian Associations of Physicians for the Environment. We strongly support this legislation. As health professionals, we are deeply concerned about the impacts that climate change is having and will have on the health of Canadians and people around the world. Why do the Conservatives insist on making pollution free?
The honourable member for North Island, Powell River.
Madam Speaker, Indigenous leaders have been calling on this government to fix their broken NEB process that approved the Trans Mountain Pipeline. This week, Grand Chief Stuart Phillips said, and I quote, It's absolutely amazing that the Prime Minister is without conscience, without any sense of responsibility to the citizens of this country and future generations. Liberals claim their most important relationship is that with Indigenous peoples, but that means nothing if they won't do the right thing. Will the Liberals start listening and cancel the pipeline expansion once and for all?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Madam Speaker, we understand that protecting the environment, growing the economy, and respecting Indigenous peoples can be done at the same time. The NDP do not. The Federal Court of Appeal has provided us a very clear path to move this project forward in the right way, and that is what we are doing. I encourage the members of the NDP to read the whole TMX decision, not just the parts that they agree with. Merci, Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for North Island Powell River.
Clearly, Madam Speaker, this government just doesn't get it when it comes to the environment and the broken NEB process. The definition of insanity is doing the same thing again and again and expecting a different result. Let's look at the facts. Indigenous leaders are saying it's broken. Environmental groups are saying it's broken. Residents of BC and Canadians from coast to coast are saying, you've got it, it's broken. What do the Liberals do? Let's trial this failed approach just one more time. What will it take for this government to acknowledge the process is broken and drop the expansion?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Madam Speaker, obviously we are following the Federal Court of Appeal's decisions and the direction that they are providing us. They have told us that we need to be consulting more with Indigenous communities affected by the TMX pipeline, and that is exactly what we are doing right now. We respect the court's decision, and we are moving forward in the right way in meaningful dialogue. That is exactly what Canadians expect of us. That is what we're delivering. Madam Speaker.
The Honourable Member for Trois-Rivières. Madam Speaker, the Liberals like to claim they are the champions of the environment, but we all know it's only for show. Behind their smiles and nice speeches, behind closed doors, the Liberals are giving favours to their oil industry friends and are buying pipelines with our money. And when the Conservatives promised to bring back Energy East, a pipeline which was massively rejected by Quebecers, the champions of the environment are opening the door to that possibility. Will the 40 Liberal MPs from Quebec commit to never reviving Energy East? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary for the Minister of Natural Resources. Madam Speaker, I'm very pleased to answer that question. Energy East was a TransCanada business decision. I would also like to announce to the NDP that it's ironic that some members of the party support the LNG Canada project, which will create 10,000 jobs in the riding of the member for Skeena-Bulkley Valley. That project will be one of the most safest environmentally in the world when it comes to LNG. When it comes to the environment, we will ensure that Canadians trust our system. The member for Trois-Rivières. We are listening to what people are telling us, Madam Speaker. It's been weeks we've been asking the question and weeks that we haven't received an answer. The opposition to Energy East is massive in Quebec, in Trois-Rivières, Montreal, and Quebec City. Everybody knows that this pipeline threatens the St. Lawrence River and other rivers. But in Ottawa, no one is listening. On the one hand, the official opposition is promising to bring back the pipeline, and on the other, the government cannot close the door to that possibility. What will it take for the Liberals to listen to Quebecers and to say no once and for all to Energy East? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. It's clear, Madam Chair, that the NDP is against any major project. We are making sure that protecting the environment goes hand in hand with working with our First Nations partners. Canadians expect us to respect the environment, that we respect our First Nations, and that we also respect decisions by our courts. This is something the Conservatives don't understand, and it's clear the NDP also don't understand a thing either. The Honourable Member for Louis Saint Laurent. Thank you, Madam Speaker. This is an interesting question period. In answer to questions by the member for Carleton, the Minister of the Environment has said that large polluters will receive discounts because jobs might be lost. That's what the Liberal carbon tax is all about, jobs. So the question is simple, Madam Speaker, why are there two standards? Why will small businesses have to pay 100%, but large emitters will get a 90% discount? The Honourable Minister of the Environment. I'm very surprised that a member of Quebec, every MP or MPP in Quebec has supported pricing carbon. So why is a member from Quebec of the Conservative Party opposed to this? It's clear that we have to fight climate change. There is a cost to pollution. So I hope that the member will listen to Quebecers who want action on climate change, who want a price on pollution, and who want a green economy. The Honourable Member for Louise Saint-Laurent. We, Conservatives, we respect the jurisdictions of provinces, but the Liberal government is imposing its will on the provinces as well. In Quebec, the system applies equally to all. Large, small, medium-sized polluters all are treated the same way. But why does the Liberal Party have a double standard when Quebec is treating everyone equally? The Honourable Minister. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think it would be important for the member to speak to someone in Quebec who understands the system. The system we have for large emitters is that they will have to respect the same principles which are applied in Quebec, in China, and in the European Union. We want to make sure that our companies are more competitive, that they will bring down emissions, and they will create good jobs in Canada.
Madam Speaker, Canadians know that there's no way the Liberal carbon tax will save them money. Ferguson Fancy Beans in my riding says that the Liberal wind carbon tax alone cost them over $50,000 last year. On an admission of her own policy, the Environment Minister admitted that 90% of the exemption for big emitters focuses on keeping jobs here in Canada. Will this government extend this to Ferguson Fancy Beans as well?
The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I think I'll once again turn to experts. So Stephen Harper's former Director of Policy. We think that the federal government is doing the right thing in putting a price on carbon in those provinces that have not done so, and in returning the money directly to households. This will encourage lower emissions while ensuring that Canadian families will not be negatively affected. Dale Bergen, from the Executive Director of Eco-Fiscal Commission. Bigger households get bigger checks, and most households' rebates will be larger than their carbon pricing costs. Households will see net gains.
The honourable member for Souris Moose Mountain.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Burt Baxter Transport, a family-owned and operated company in my riding, will deeply feel the consequences of this Prime Minister's failure to support small businesses in Canada. The forced Liberal carbon tax will increase the annual cost of diesel fuel for their trucks by over $400,000 by 2022. They will have to choose between charging their customers more or laying off many of their employees. Where is their discount?
Hear, hear. Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Whether you're a trucker or you're a farmer or you're a small business owner or you're an environmentalist or you're a child, we are all paying the costs of climate change right now. We're paying the costs through extreme weather events like floods, like droughts, like forest fires, and 90 people died in Quebec this summer because of extreme heat. We are now, the costs that are to Canadians, I have gone from $400 million to over $1 billion. The UN climate report projects that the cost to the world will be in the trillions of dollars if we don't take action now. It is not free to pollute. It should not be free to pollute, and our government will not allow it to be free to pollute.
Honourable member for Yorkton Melville.
Speaker, Boombata Homes is an innovative company that will be hit hard by the Liberal carbon tax imposed on Saskatchewan businesses. It means families working hard to afford a home will now face even higher prices. It also means the Liberal affordable housing program will be more expensive. Jason and Susan know what it will mean for their business, their subcontractors, and their construction workers. They know an election gimmick when they see one. Why do large corporations get exemptions from this government and they do not?
Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
You know, when I talk to small businesses, and I've talked to small businesses across the country, what do they want to do? They want to do right by the environment. They want to be more energy efficient and save money, and they also want to lower their emissions. Let me give you the example of Variform. It's a steel manufacturer in Cambridge. What did they do? They reduced their emissions by 80%, and they saved $1 million. We are going to support small businesses to do that, to be more energy efficient, so they can save money that they can reinvest in their businesses and create more jobs.
The honourable member for Barrie Innisfil.
Well, Madam Speaker, we got a really deep dive into Liberal ideology earlier in question period when it comes to the carbon tax. The minister admitted that large emitters will be exempt to save Canadian jobs, yet small and medium-sized enterprises, which employ 80% of Canadians, will not be exempt. Why are these businesses and those jobs less important to the Liberals than large emitters? Isn't this just another attack on small business?
Honourable Minister.
Madam Speaker, it is always so surprising to hear the other side talk about how much they care about jobs. We have reduced the small business tax rate to 9%. We've created more than 500,000 jobs with Canadians. We have the lowest unemployment rate in decades. And you know what we're also going to do? We're also going to tackle climate change. We're going to save businesses money by helping them be more energy efficient. And you know what? At the end of the day, we're going to do what is critically important, is ensure that we have a sustainable planet for our kids.
The honourable member for Windsor-Tecumseh.
Madam Speaker, a French court that was supposed to rule today on a decision that released Hassan Diab from a French prison and allowed him to come home to Canada has pushed that decision to next year. This nightmare saga has persisted for over a decade. But the government insists on carrying out a narrow review that will not even look at reforming our deeply flawed extradition regime. Why won't this government just do the right thing and call a public inquiry?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Justice and Attorney General.
Madam Speaker, our government recognizes there is a legitimate interest in better understanding the process that led to Dr. Diab's original extradition under the previous government. The Minister of Justice has asked for an external third-party review of this matter so that a thorough review and examination of the circumstances of that extradition to France can take place. That independent external review is being led by Murray Siegel. Mr. Siegel has been given the tools, access and discretion necessary to conduct a thorough review of the case, and we look forward to his report.
The honourable member for Timmins James Bay.
So Germany has cut off arms sales to the Saudi regime. There's no way this government can justify this arms deal to the House of Saud. So here's a simple plan. Number one, we cancel the deal. There's not an international body anywhere that'll take the side of the Saudis. Number two, impose the Magnitsky sanctions on these criminals. Number three, we repurpose the plant in London to build military vehicles for our troops who need the upgrades. And as for the Saudi Crown Prince, will the government do the right thing and tell him that we don't apologize to tyrants and he can go stuff his objections?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Nous condamnons le meurtre de Jamal Khashoggi.
In the Jamal Khashoggi affair, we demand that Canadians' arms exports are used in a way that respect human rights, and that's why we have committed to putting in place a more robust arms export system. As the Prime Minister said yesterday, we are actively looking at the existing arms exports permits to Saudi Arabia.
Speaker, November 20th, 2015, James Cudmore, the CBC's military affairs reporter, broke a story. The first sentence, the new Liberal government is delaying approval of a deal to convert a civilian cargo ship into a badly needed military supply vessel. December 21st, Mr. Cudmore wrote his last story about controversial problems in the Navy's procurement program. His last official day at the CBC, January 8th. He started work for the Defence Minister 4 days later. But on what day, Madam Speaker, did the Minister offer Mr. Cudmore a job?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Again, I will quote sections on the Sub Judice Convention principle outlined in Chapter 13 of the House of Commons Procedure and Practice, 3rd edition. The Convention recognizes the courts as opposed to the House as the proper forum in which to decide cases. And as Speaker Fraser noted, the Convention maintains a separation and mutual respect between legislative and judicial branches of government. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
For Thornhill.
Well, Madam Speaker, the Conflict of Interest Act says a public office holder is in a conflict of interest when he or she exercises an official power, duty, or function that provides an opportunity to improperly further another person's private interests. Now, we know ministers often hire journalists for their communication skills to promote government policies. This seems to be the first time a journalist has been hired to block his communication skills, to shut him up. So, Madam Speaker, the date is important. When did the minister hire Mr. Cudmore and give him a job?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Public Safety and Emergency Preparedness.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. As I was told that the date was provided. So, okay, but
just ask members to allow the Parliamentary Secretary to answer the question, and if they have other questions, they'll be able to stand.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The sub judice rule dictates that members are expected to refrain from discussing matters that are before the courts or tribunals, which are courts of record. Therefore, we will not be making further comment on that. Thank you.
The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. That's false, Madam Speaker. No date was ever provided to our leader's offers with regard to when a job was offered to Mr. Cudmore and when he was hired. I don't understand how the 40 Liberal MPs from Quebec are willing to accept such absurd answers from their own government. Mario Dumont recently said, with regard to the Irving lobby, I can't believe that Quebec's 40 Liberal MPs will agree to being less influential than one business family. My question is simple. Will the 40 Liberal MPs from Quebec finally stand up and ask the Prime Minister to defend Davies workers? And when was the job offer made to James Cudmore? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Thank you, Madam Speaker. The government does not comment and does not speculate on issues linked to a process before judicial process. We believe in an independent judiciary. I would like to remind the member that the sub judice rule cannot be violated by public declarations which might prejudice files issues which are before the courts. Thank you. The honourable member for Mégantic-L'Érable. Madam Speaker, a date. No commentary, just a date. That's all we're asking for now. What's so secret about a date? A day, a month, a year? All dates are public, Madam Speaker. I've got a calendar here. There are lots of dates. And it's like a multiple choice question. But and not a single date is marked confidential. So what I'm asking for is simple and public. When exactly, on what date did the Liberal government make a job offer to reporter James Cudmore? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary. Madam Speaker, the role of the House of Commons is to help to develop public policy and legislation and to apply them. Police forces conduct investigations and lay charges. The courts rule on individual cases. Therefore, it would be inappropriate to comment. Thank you.
In my riding of Essex, 1 in 4 kids live in poverty. That is unacceptable. Our food banks are strained, there's a lack of affordable housing, and hope for a minimum wage increase was just shattered by Doug Ford. The cancelled Basic Income Pilot Project in Ontario was helping us gather critical information on how to reduce poverty levels. While Ford continues to attack the most vulnerable, the Liberals are turning a blind eye. New Democrats join our leader Jagmeet Singh and call on the Liberals to continue this program. Will Liberals help? Or are they going to turn their back on vulnerable Ontarians too?
The Honourable Minister for Families and Social Development.
Of reducing poverty in Canada, because this has been the objective of our government since 2015. We have started by introducing the most innovative social policy in the generation, the Canada Child Benefit, which is lifting 300,000 children out of poverty every month, and there are 200,000 parents at the same time. We have launched in August the first ever poverty reduction strategy, which is going to reduce by a further 100,000 people in Canada poverty by March 2019. And we're going to look forward to work with other governments to make sure that this is well understood.
The honourable member for Saskatoon West.
Madam Speaker, the application process for the government's co-investment fund is onerous and complicated for nonprofits. On the other hand, the rental construction financing initiative geared to the private sector has less stringent criteria for affordability, environmental assessment, and accessibility. Why do nonprofit groups have to jump through more hoops to get similar benefits? Will the minister listen to feedback, allow flexibility so these nonprofits can get down to work? Thank you.
The Honourable Minister of Families, Children and Social Development.
Madam Speaker, we had been so pleased and so proud to work since 2015 with a number of partners in Canada that had been waiting for a long time for the first ever national housing strategy of this country to be launched in November 2017. We've been delighted with the level of input, the quality of the advice that they were giving to us, and we look forward to work with them over the next 10 years on this $40 billion plus investment in the homes of all Canadians, in particular the more vulnerable ones. Thank you.
The
Honourable Member for Edmonton Centre.
Relationship is more important to Canada than that with Indigenous peoples, and our government is committed to building renewed relationships based on recognition of rights and mutual respect. The Lubicon were left out when Treaty 8 was signed in 1899, and as a result, they have been negotiating with the government for almost 40 years over their rightful title to lands and treaty benefits. Could the Minister of Crown Indigenous Relations update this House on reconciliation with the Lubicon Lake Band?
Honourable Minister of Crown and Indigenous Relations.
I'd like to thank the member for Edmonton Centre for his question and his ongoing advocacy. This week, we took a historic step forward on the path of reconciliation with the Lubicon Lake Band. After decades of negotiations, our government, the Government of Alberta, Lubicon Lake Band have reached agreements to finally address this historic injustice, land compensation and community infrastructure. As Chief Billy Joe said, this means a brighter future, a brighter economic future for their people. We acknowledge Premier Notley and her late father, the late Jim Prentice, generations of Lubicon.
The Honourable Member for Haliburton, Kawartha Lakes, Brock.
Madam Speaker, Bill C-69 is putting a chill on investment in Canada's natural resources sector. The president of the Indian Resource Council said, quote, Bill C-69 will harm Indigenous economic development, create barriers to decision-making, and make Canada unattractive for resource investment. This legislation must be stopped. Hear, hear. To make matters worse, under this Prime Minister, Canadian energy investment has seen its biggest decline in more than 70 years. Unbelievable. When will the Natural Resources Minister kill this bill?
Here, here. The Honourable Minister of Environment and Climate Change.
We're very pleased with Bill C-69. Why? Because we listen to Indigenous peoples, we listen to business people, we listen to people in the resource sector, we listen to environmentalists, because what did we commit to? We committed to getting our resource market, but we also committed to rebuilding trust in how we do environmental assessments. We've come up with a system that engages Indigenous peoples early, that has shorter and tighter timelines as businesses were requesting. It also ensures that we make decisions based on science. We know to get our resources to market in a responsible way, we need a proper process. That's exactly what.
The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Energy investment has seen its biggest decline in more than 70 years. Canadian businesses are dying, people are losing their jobs, and tens of billions of dollars are going to the U.S. economy instead of ours. And the Prime Minister's No More Pipelines bill will only make it worse. Will the Prime Minister...
There seems to be a problem with translation. Est-ce que ça fonctionne maintenant?
Is it working now?
Est-ce que ça fonctionne? Oh. Ok, je vais y aller après. Okay. Ça fonctionne maintenant?
Is it working?
Before I continue, I noticed that I just missed out on one gentleman, so I will one MP, so I will go back and then I'll come back to the member. The Honourable Member Calgary Rocky Ridge.
Mr. Speaker, Madam Speaker, the Liberals' No More Pipelines bill was passed by this House with the shameful support of 3 Alberta Liberals. But it's not too late to stop it. Yeah. Last week, the Alberta Chamber of Commerce told the Finance Committee that any pipeline company under C-69 would be foolish even to apply for any type of pipeline, while the Alberta crude differential hit $50 last week. Will the minister from Alberta do the right thing and kill this bill before it becomes the No More Pipelines law.
Do the right thing.
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Actually, Madam Speaker, I'd like to basically tell the House once again about the important investment that LNG Canada is making actually in a pipeline that is going to new markets, that is being built in Kitimat. It's a $40 billion investment in the Canadian market, the largest ever private investment in Canada. It's going to create 10,000 jobs. Obviously, the Conservatives don't want to talk about that. At the end of the day, Madam Speaker, the Conservatives have failed to bring any new pipelines to new markets in 10 years. We will take no lessons from them. Merci.
Bravo. The Honourable Member for Calgary-Midnapore.
Madam Speaker, thanks to the Liberals, energy investment in Canada has seen its biggest decline in more than 70 years. Canadian businesses are dying, people are losing their jobs, and tens of billions of dollars are going to the U.S. economy instead of our own. And the Prime Minister's No More Pipelines bill will only make it worse. $100 billion lost and you're laughing. Will the Prime Minister stand up for Canadian workers, businesses, and our economy and scrap C-69?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Natural Resources.
Let me repeat my answer because I was obviously my colleague did not listen or did not hear what I had to say with respect to the $40 billion investment. It is the largest investment in Canadian history with respect to our natural resources market. Madam Speaker, at the end of the day, Conservatives failed to bring any new pipeline to new markets. We are making sure that we're going to do it in the right way. We are following the Court of Appeal decision to making sure that we're respecting Indigenous peoples, respecting the environment, and that's exactly what we intend to do, and we will make sure that we get it right. Merci.
I just want to remind members, they may not like the answer, but I would ask that they listen, and so that we can get to the next question in the proper fashion, and that I can also hear the answer. The Honourable Member for Sturgeon River Parkland.
Well, what the Liberals failed to mention, Madam Speaker, is that $40 billion project is exempt from their job-killing carbon tax. Now the Liberals' No More Pipelines bill, C-69, is a threat to the livelihood of Canadians who depend on the energy sector for employment. New carbon taxes, downstream emissions regulations, and now C-69 will end energy investment in Canada as we know it. The record is clear. The Liberals have failed to get a pipeline built, and it's time for them to scrap this legislation. Will the Natural Resources Minister from Alberta do the right thing and kill this bill?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Speaker, after 10 years of inaction under the Harper Conservatives, 99% of the oil back in 2006 was being brought and sold to the U.S. markets. And in 2015, when they were voted out of office clearly, same thing, 99% of the oil was going to the U.S. markets. We are making sure that we're doing things in the proper way. We're following the court decision to make sure that we're bringing our oil to new markets. Merci.
The Member for Elmwood-Transcona.
Madame la Présidente.
Madam Speaker, after a year and a half of work and several $1 million to try to solve the many problems of the Phoenix pay system, public servants are still not being paid properly. Many unions have suggested that there are resources in the system to make Phoenix work without waiting for a whole new system. There are solutions that exist. Is the government looking for them? When will they announce the next step toward a fair solution for public servants?
The Honourable Member for Public Services and Procurement.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are two possible paths on Phoenix. There's my path, which is to stabilize the system for public servants, and then there's the path of the Treasury Board. The President is trying to find a new solution there. We're working closely with unions, and we're going to do this together.
For Elmwood-Transcona?
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker, but I think people need to hear a more concrete answer in terms of how we're going to make progress. That's why people doubt that we are going to make progress in a timely way. It's why civilian members of the RCMP are upset that the government has reversed a previous commitment not to put them on the Phoenix payroll system until it's fixed, and instead created an arbitrary deadline of 2020 where, come what may, they're going to put those RCMP members on the payroll system. Why are they risking doing material damage to the men and women of the RCMP when the payroll system isn't ready to go? And will they reverse the decision?
The Honourable Minister of Public
Services and Procurement. Services. Thank you, Madam Speaker. I can assure everyone in this House that we are leaving no stone unturned to resolve the issues related to the Phoenix pay system. We are seeing progress. Yes, it is slow. We have reduced the backlog by 100,000 cases since January of this year. We have reduced the backlog of departments that are within the pay pod system by 21%. In the same time, we've paid out $1.5 billion in back pay with respect to collective agreements that weren't negotiated by the previous government. We are doing everything we can. We have 1,500 people working on this in the pay centre, and we are absolutely committed to getting this done.
The honourable member for Markham Unionville.
Madam Speaker, the opioid crisis is growing every year. The number of deaths due to overdose are increasing at an alarming rate. In 2016, there were just over 3,000 opioid-related deaths in Canada. In 2017, the number jumped up to almost 4,000. That is a 33% increase over just 1 year. These are preventable deaths, Madam Speaker. When will we see the real plan from this government to address this very troubling issue?
Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Our government is deeply concerned about the tragic effect of the opioid crisis across the country. To address the crisis, we've responded through significant new federal investments, enacting new legislation, fast-tracking regulatory action, and going forward, we continue to address the crisis by increasing access to treatment, supporting innovative approaches in harm reduction, and addressing stigma related to opioid use. We will continue to work with our stakeholders to bring forward solutions to save lives and turn the tide of this national public health crisis.
The honourable member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, that answer is not good enough. 16 Canadians are dying every day. In fact, Madam Speaker, more people are dying in Canada each year from the opioid crisis than from homicide, suicide, and traffic accidents combined. And the response of this Liberal government has been totally inadequate. They spent 4 times as much to legalize cannabis as they have trying to prevent and treat opioid addiction. When will the government take meaningful action to eliminate this crisis?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Madam Speaker. And again, our government is incredibly concerned about the opioid crisis and the price it has for Canadians on families. Building on our actions to date through Budget 2018, we're investing $231 million for additional measures to help address the opioid crisis, including $150 million for emergency treatment funding for provinces and territories. We earmarked $100 million to support the Canadian Drug and Substance Strategy and restored harm reduction as a core pillar, and we're providing urgent funding to provinces hardest hit by the crisis. We will continue to work with the provinces and territories to address this crisis.
Member for Sarnia-Lambton.
Well, Madam Speaker, again, totally inadequate. The United States has recognized opioid addiction as a crisis, and they've spent 30 times the amount that was just announced, and they've focused their efforts to prevent overprescription and to prevent drugs from coming into their country. Can the Health Minister tell this House what actions have been taken to increase treatment capacity for the thousands of Canadians that need it?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Health.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. So as I said, we've earmarked $100 million to support the Canadian Drug and Substances Strategy. Unlike the Conservative government that was hard on crime and punishment, we're treating this as a harm reduction. We're looking for health strategies and science-based interventions to help people who are suffering from dependency to opioids. We've also addressed the manufacturing. So we've required Canadian labeling for all prescription opioids to clarify the recommended dosing, limit the quantity of opioids that should be prescribed for acute pain, and we're strengthening the warnings to people that this is a drug that could create dependency. Our government supported the passage of the good...
Member for Hall-Elmer.
Madam Speaker, for years, we've known that the Conservative Party's idea of helping Canadian families is sending checks to millionaires. That's what they did under Stephen Harper, and the fact that they voted against the Canada Child Benefit and against the indexation of the CCB shows that they haven't changed at all. Can the Minister of Children, Families and Social Development remind this House why the CCB has been called the most significant social policy innovation in a generation? The Honourable Minister of Children, Family and Social Development. Thank you, Madam Speaker. First of all, I'd like to thank the member for Hull-Aylmer for his remarkable support for families in his riding. The CCB has been giving more families to 9 out of 10 Canadians tax-free since July 2016. It's allowed 500,000 children and their parents to be lifted out of poverty, and it's since the summer it's been indexed to the cost of living. Our government has committed to helping middle-class families, not just millionaires, and our CCB proves that. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-Lévis. Madam Speaker, the Minister of Defence has contradicted himself. We need 2 supply ships. That's written in his own defence policy, which was tabled with great pomp in 2017. When will the Minister of Defence give the Obelix contract to the Davie shipyard? And why is he abandoning the Quebec economy and all of the workers at the shipyard? What are the Liberals waiting for to take action and protect our national security?
The Honourable Minister of Veteran Affairs and Associate Minister of National Defence.
I can assure the honourable member that this government has put more money into national defence in the past 3 years, and we will continue to investigate that inquiry. I will be sure to take that back to the minister. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Minister, the Honourable Member for Nepean.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. With November 1st around the corner, parliamentarians and Canadians will be waiting for the immigration levels plan. This past year, our minister announced an ambitious plan to grow our economy, help the middle class, and lead the world in welcoming those most vulnerable. Will the parliamentary secretary to the minister please inform the House on what to expect on November 1st?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Honourable Parliamentary Secretary.
Madam Speaker, my honourable colleague from Nepean and all Canadians can expect good news on November 1st, and I thank him for the question. It's clear that he understands that a strong immigration plan is key to driving economic growth and creating good middle-class jobs for Canadians. That's why our government will continue to recruit top global talent, why we will resettle the world's most vulnerable, why we will reunite families again, cleaning up the backlogs left to us by the Harper Conservatives. And, Madam Speaker, we will build upon the record $30 billion contributed to Canada by international visitors and students last year alone.
The Honourable Member for Bhopal-Limoilou. Madam Speaker, for 2 years, official language minority communities have been calling for the Official Languages Act to be thoroughly modernized. We did it in 1988, and yesterday the Senate tabled a report that came to the same conclusion. The Official Languages Commissioner last week came to the same conclusion. Yesterday, the Liberals presented interesting measures, but they're only going to apply in 2023. When will the Liberals stop taking our linguistic communities hostage, and when will they finally take action to start modernizing the Official Languages Act? The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Tourism, Official Languages and la Francophonie. Madam Speaker, we have heard the cry from Francophone communities, and we remain committed to protecting and promoting bilingualism. After having led vast consultations, we announced an in-depth review of the Official Languages Act. The proposed changes will support and strengthen our Francophone communities across this country. Madam Speaker, it was the Liberal government who created the Official Languages Act, and it is the Liberal government who will take the necessary steps to support our official language communities across the country. The Honourable Member for Repentigny. Madam Speaker, Quebec's ADISC Association held its annual gala on Sunday, and its last 14 presidents think that the government should take this opportunity to give our artists some good news. We need to force streaming platforms like Spotify and Apple Music to pay artists fairly, to fund our culture, and to showcase Quebec content. But that won't happen with just consultations, nor will it happen with piecemeal measures. Will the government pass a law on electronic commerce to ensure that laws continue to apply online?
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canadian Heritage and Multiculturalism.
On this side of the House, we stand for our artists, and that is what we've shown in last year's cultural policy.
Historic investments of $3.2 billion in the cultural sector, including the CBC, the Canada Council for the Arts, Telefilm, and the NFB. Due to the previous Conservative government's inaction, our laws on culture predate the internet, which is why we're reviewing them so that we can continue to support high-quality Canadian production. The principle of this review is clear. If you participate in the system, you will continue to contribute.
The Honourable Member for Joliette. They won't announce anything on the weekend. Madam Speaker, the government will review arms export permits to Saudi Arabia in the goal of getting some answers about what happened with Jamal Khashoggi. Do we really need to paint them a picture? The regime assassinated him, Madam Speaker. They did so in cold blood, just like they whipped Raif Badawi and imprisoned his sister, just like they starved children in Yemen and repressed their own population with light armored vehicles sold to them by Canada. The government has all the answers they need. Will they stop selling tanks to murderers?
Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Foreign Affairs.
We are working with our allies to consider our options. We are currently reviewing arms exports permits to Saudi Arabia. All exports need to respect the conditions laid out in the permits. We've already frozen arms export permits in the past, and we will not hesitate to do so again. The Honourable Member for Joliette. Well, I guess we have to paint them a picture. Madam Speaker, last week the government forgave a $2.5 billion debt to Chrysler at taxpayer expense. They did so secretly without even listing the recipient in the public books. But that's not the only secret business they've been up to. GM also has a debt of over $1 billion and has since for 10 years ago. All week, when we ask what's happening with GM's debt, the government answers by talking to us about Chrysler. But GM and Chrysler are not the same thing. So who will pay for GM's debt? GM or the taxpayers?
The Honourable...
The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Finance. The debt that the member referred to, well, there was an agreement concluded under the previous government. We evaluated all of the options to recuperate the money for Canadians, but this was a contract that was signed under the previous government. Thank you. That concludes oral questions.
Point of order. The Honourable Member for Bellechasse-les-Etchemins-Lévis. Yes, Madam Speaker. I believe that there was an interpretation problem during question period because the Minister of Veterans Affairs seems to have really not answered my question. To enlighten me, I have here the defense policy of the Canadian government. I'm sorry, but no, that is not a point of order. That is a point of debate.
Tabling of documents. The Honourable Parliamentary Secretary of the Government House Leader.
Yes, thank you, Madam Speaker. Pursuant to Standing Order 36(8), I have the honour to table in both official languages the government's responses to 32 petitions.
Introduction of government bills. Déclaration de ministre.
Statements by ministers.
Rapport de délégation
Reports from interparliamentary delegations.
Presenting reports from committees.